The council chamber on Meridian Station was cold and vast. Tall walls stretched up to a ceiling so high that light from the far end barely reached the speaker's platform. Commander Victor Hayes stood in the center of the chamber, his dark uniform making him look even smaller against the enormous space. Around him, representatives from over 200 alien species sat in rising rows of seats. Some were humanoid. Some were not. Some breathed the same air that Victor breathed. Others floated in protective spheres of their own atmosphere. Victor had prepared for this moment for 3 years. He had studied the diplomatic records. He had learned the names and personalities of the most powerful species. He understood their histories of conquest and expansion. He knew exactly what they wanted from Earth, and he knew exactly what they would do if they were not stopped. The lights dimmed. The chamber fell silent. Victor's voice, when he spoke, was steady and clear. "I represent the people of Earth," he said. "We have a boundary. It marks the edge of our solar system. This boundary is a warning line. Any military vessel that crosses this boundary will face immediate and absolute retaliation. This is not a threat. It is a fact. We are prepared to enforce it." For a moment, nothing happened. Then the chamber erupted. Voices overlapped, cutting across each other in dozens of languages. The translation system worked hard to keep up. Some species laughed outright. Others spoke in low, serious tones that suggested they were discussing how to crush this upstart human who dared to make such demands. Admiral Kress of the Xiphons stood first. He was tall and angular, his skin a deep purple color that shifted in the light. His species had conquered 17 star systems. They had broken the resistance of 5 different civilizations. The Xiphons did not accept warnings from primitive species. "The humans think they can order us around," Kress said, his voice dripping with contempt. "Their world is barely advanced. They've only just learned to leave their home planet. And now they draw lines in space and expect us to obey?" He laughed, and his laughter echoed through the chamber. Other Xiphons joined in, their harsh sounds filling the air. Commander Victor did not move. He did not show anger or fear. He simply waited. The leader of the Krell Empire stood next. The Krell were a collective species, and when their representative spoke, it was with a voice that seemed to come from many throats at once. Their bodies were covered in dark scales, and their eyes glowed with an eerie blue light. "We have mapped your solar system," the Krell leader said. "We have cataloged your weapons. We have assessed your population and your resources. You have nothing that can stop us. Your warning is the desperate cry of prey that does not understand its place in the food chain." Again, laughter filled the chamber. More species joined in. The message was clear. Earth's warning meant nothing to them. They had heard similar claims from a dozen worlds before they conquered them. They had listened to desperate speeches from species trying to survive. And every single time, the outcome had been the same. The powerful took what they wanted. The weak lost everything. Victor listened to every word. He watched every species that laughed. He memorized the names of those who spoke in favor of conquest and those who remained silent. All of this information would go back to Earth. All of it would be recorded. All of it would be remembered. "Your response is noted," Victor said simply. "The warning remains in effect. 72 hours from this moment, our defensive systems will activate. After that time, any hostile vessel crossing our boundary will be destroyed. There will be no second warning. There will be no negotiation. This is final." The chamber fell silent again. Some species seemed to be taking this seriously now. The silence suggested doubt, and doubt was something the laughing species did not show. But Victor could see it in the way certain representatives exchanged glances. Some of them had conquered worlds before. Some of them had faced unexpected resistance. Some of them understood that overconfidence was a luxury that could kill empires. Victor left the chamber and headed back to his transport. The Meridian Station orbited above a planet called Vareth, a neutral world where all species could meet without fear of attack. The station was massive, a structure that had taken 50 years to build. Victor's small transport was like an insect compared to the enormous docking bays built to hold military vessels, the size of mountains dot as his transport pulled away from the station. Victor opened a secure communication channel to Earth. The signal would take time to reach his home world, traveling through space at the speed of light. By the time his message arrived, he would be already heading back to Earth on a faster ship. Director Pierce, they did not take us seriously, he said into the communicator. The Xiphons laughed. The Krell dismissed us as prey. The Confederation of Seven spoke of conquest and expansion. They are preparing their armada. I estimate they will reach our space in exactly 72 hours, as our intelligence predicted. The warning has been delivered. Now comes the hard part. Back on Earth, in a command center buried deep beneath the mountains of Colorado, Director Amanda Pierce listened to Victor's message. She sat in a dark room filled with screens that displayed information from across the solar system. Around her, dozens of people monitored systems and equipment. None of them knew the full truth. None of them knew what was about to happen. Director Pierce knew. She had known for 10 years. She had spent those 10 years preparing for this exact moment. The people of Earth had contributed to a project they did not understand. Workers in factories across the planet had manufactured components for a system that remained classified at the highest levels. Scientists had conducted experiments on principles they could not discuss. Military personnel had trained for scenarios they could not explain to their families. And now, in exactly 72 hours, everything would change. The galaxy would discover that Earth was not a primitive world waiting to be conquered. The galaxy would learn that sometimes the greatest weapon was not size or strength or numbers. The galaxy would understand that humanity had learned to survive on a hard world, and that meant humanity had learned things that softer species never would. Director Pierce closed her eyes and took a single breath. Then she opened them and gave the order that would echo through every system, every facility, every corner of Earth's hidden project. Begin final activation sequence, she said. In 72 hours, when they cross that line, they will understand what it means to have ignored a human warning. The countdown began. Kyle Morrison woke up at 5 in the morning like he did every day. His alarm clock on the nightstand showed the time in red numbers. He sat on the edge of his bed for a moment, feeling the weight of the day before it even started. Then he stood up, dressed in his work clothes, and made his way to the factory. The factory was a massive structure on the outskirts of Detroit. Kyle had worked there for 8 years. He ran machines that cut and shaped metal components. He did not know what these components were used for. His supervisor had told him not to ask questions. The pay was good, better than similar jobs in other factories. And Kyle had a daughter to support, so he did not push for answers. Every day, Kyle arrived at his station, put on his safety gear, and operated his machines. The components came in from previous stations already partially formed. Kyle's job was to cut them to exact specifications. The measurements had to be perfect. Even a difference of 1 millimeter would result in rejection. Kyle had become very good at his job. He had become very good at precision. One day, a man in a black suit came to the factory. He walked through the work floor with the supervisor, pointing at different stations and making notes. When he got to Kyle's station, he stopped and watched Kyle work for 5 minutes without saying anything. Then he nodded to the supervisor and moved on. Kyle did not think about it again. But 3 days later, Kyle was called to a small office. The man in the black suit was there. The man introduced himself as an agent of the government. He told Kyle that he was doing important work. He could not tell Kyle what the work was for, but Kyle should know that it mattered. Kyle's precision was helping to keep America safe. Kyle did not know how components that looked like simple metal parts could keep America safe, but he did not ask. He just nodded and went back to work. Patricia Wells was different from Kyle. She was a physicist, one of the best in her field. She had graduated from university with honors and had been recruited directly by the government. She had refused a position at a major technology company because the government had offered her something more important. They had offered her the chance to work on something that would change the world. Patricia worked in a facility buried beneath the Canadian Shield. The facility had no windows. The walls were made of concrete so thick that nothing could penetrate them. Patricia had a security clearance that was so high that she could not even tell her parents what she did for work. Her job was to design algorithms and mathematical models for a system that operated on principles that had only recently been discovered. The principles came from research conducted over decades, but research that had been kept secret from the rest of the world. Patricia understood enough to know that what she was doing was revolutionary. She understood enough to know that it worked. She understood enough to know that it would determine the future of human civilization. She worked 12 hours a day. Sometimes she worked longer. She ate meals at her desk. She slept in a small room beneath the facility. She did not go outside for weeks at a time, and she never once regretted it. Around the world, thousands of people like Kyle and Patricia contributed to the project. Factory workers manufactured components. Engineers designed systems. Scientists conducted experiments. Military personnel trained soldiers and prepared weapons. All of them knew that they were working on something important. Most of them did not know what it was. Director Amanda Pierce knew. She walked through the main facility beneath the Canadian Shield, checking on progress. The system was nearly complete. Every component was in place. Every test had been run. Every calculation had been verified. Earth was ready. The screens on the walls displayed the approach of the alien armada. The data came from satellites hidden throughout the solar system, sensors that had been placed by specially designed probes over the past decade. The aliens did not know these sensors existed. The aliens did not know that every move of their fleet was being tracked in real time. Pierce stopped in front of the main control center. The technician at the station, a young man named David Chun, looked up at her. "Status?" Pierce asked. "All systems are green, Director," David said. "Final integration is complete. We are ready to activate on your order." Pierce nodded. She thought about all the people who had contributed to this project. She thought about Kyle Morrison making his perfect cuts. She thought about Patricia Wells designing her mathematical models. She thought about the millions of people across the planet who had worked toward this goal without fully understanding it. She thought about what would happen if they failed. The implications were clear. If the system did not work, humanity would face an invasion unlike anything in history. The combined armada of 6 different species contained over 30,000 military vessels. Earth had nothing that could match them in conventional warfare. The planet would fall within weeks. The survivors would face slavery or extinction. But if the system worked, the galaxy would understand that Earth was not a primitive world waiting to be conquered. The galaxy would understand that humanity had built something impossible. The galaxy would understand that the species that came from the harsh world, called Earth, had learned things that softer civilizations never would. Pierce pulled up the communication feed from Meridian Station. Victor Hayes was still in transit back to Earth. His message about the Council had been received and analyzed. The timing was perfect. The aliens would move exactly as predicted. They would cross the warning line exactly when the calculations said they would. "Show me the activation sequence," Pierce said to David. David's fingers moved across the keyboard. A series of screens appeared showing the complete system. It was elegant in its simplicity. It was brilliant in its design. It was impossible in its function. "Everything is ready, Director," David said. "We just need your authorization code and the final command." Pierce did not give the order yet. She knew that once she did, there would be no going back. The system would activate. The waiting would end. The moment of truth would arrive. She walked to a different station and looked at the historical records. Images of Earth appeared on the screen. The planet was blue and green and white. It was home to billions of people. Most of them did not know that their survival depended on what happened in the next 72 hours. Pierce thought about her family. She thought about her sister in California and her brother in New York. She thought about her nephew, who wanted to be an astronaut. She thought about all the children of Earth who deserved to have a future. Then she returned to David Chen at the control station. "Begin final system activation," she said. "Lock out all manual controls. Once we cross the 72-hour mark, this will run automatically. Even I will not be able to stop it." "Yes, Director," David said. His fingers moved across the keyboard one final time. The screens changed. The status indicators shifted from green to yellow to red. The system was arming itself. The countdown was beginning. "It is done," David said quietly. "We are committed now." Pierce nodded. She thought about the Xiphons laughing in the council chamber. She thought about the Krull speaking of conquest. She thought about all the alien species that had dismissed humanity as prey. In 72 hours, they would learn the truth. In 72 hours, they would understand what a mistake they had made. The preparation was complete. Now came the test. The command ship of the combined armada moved through space with the confidence of an apex predator. Admiral Kress of the Xiphons stood on the bridge, watching the tactical display as his fleet approached the solar system. 30,000 vessels moved in coordinated formations. Fighters, destroyers, cruisers, battleships, and carrier vessels, all arranged in patterns designed to overwhelm any defense quickly. Beside Kress, the Krell commander observed the tactical data with satisfaction. The Krell had brought 15,000 vessels. The Xiphons had contributed 12,000. The Confederation of Seven had added 3,000 more. Against such numbers, resistance was futile. The humans had demonstrated no advanced technology. They had no space navy of any significance. They had nothing but their warning. And threats meant nothing when you had overwhelming force. Kress opened a communication channel to all vessels in the fleet. "This is Admiral Kress. We are approaching the boundary of the human system. In 1 hour, we will cross it. The humans think they can threaten us. They will learn their mistake. When we cross that line, we will move to a full assault pattern. Expect minimal resistance. Expect to reach planetary orbit within 6 hours. Prepare for ground invasion operations to begin within 8 hours. For conquest and glory." The bridge crew of Kress's command ship erupted in cheers. The communication system filled with affirmations from vessels across the armada. They were ready. They had trained for this. They had conquered worlds before. This would be no different. This would be another victory for the powers of the galaxy. The countdown to the warning line crossed began. 10 hours remaining. 5 hours. 1 hour. The sensors of the armada tracked the invisible boundary as they approached it. The humans had drawn a line in space, and that line was rapidly approaching. Kress felt a moment of something almost like curiosity. What could the humans possibly have prepared? What surprise could a primitive species hide that would matter against 30,000 military vessels? Then the countdown reached 0. The leading ships of the Armada crossed the warning line. For exactly 2 seconds, nothing happened. Then the first energy spike appeared on every sensor in the fleet. Alarms began to wail across 1,000 vessels simultaneously. Officers on those ships frantically checked their instruments, searching for the source of the spike. They found nothing. There was no incoming fire. There were no enemy vessels visible. There was only the energy spike, growing larger and more intense. Then the first ships reported system failures. The report came from a destroyer on the forward perimeter. The captain of that vessel transmitted a message of confusion and alarm. All power systems had failed simultaneously. The ship's engines went dead. Life support systems shut down. Navigation computers went offline. Within seconds, the crew was running on backup power and emergency protocols. Then the report was cut off. A fighter squadron reported that their craft were experiencing catastrophic failures in their guidance systems. Their weapons would not fire. Their communications were garbled into static. One by one, the fighters ceased transmitting. The Krell commander sent a demand for clarity. What was happening? Kress demanded a full report from his tactical officers. The answer came back fragmented and confused. It was not an attack. No visible weapons were being fired. No energy beams crossed the space. No missiles traveled toward the fleet. But vessels were experiencing failures in systems that should have been hardened against any known attack. The failures were cascading. They were spreading from ship to ship like a disease. Kress realized with sudden certainty that he had made a terrible mistake. The humans had not been bluffing. They had not drawn a line that they could not enforce. They had lied about the nature of their threat. This was not a conventional weapon system. This was something else entirely. Something that the Xiphons, for all their advanced technology, did not have a defense against. Kress screamed orders. Retreat. Pull back across the boundary. All ships fall back immediately, but the ships could not retreat. Their engines were dead. Their power systems were offline. The failures that had started with isolated vessels spread to larger ships. Cruisers went dark. Destroyers drifted helpless. Carriers, massive structures with crews in the thousands, suffered catastrophic system failures and began to break apart internally. The communication channels filled with screams. Captains reporting the death of their crews. Commanders experiencing vessel failures that made no sense. Alien voices crying out in alarm and fear and desperation. In 72 seconds. Half the Armada was dead or dying. At the 120-second mark. The Krell commander managed to transmit a single message before his own vessel systems failed completely. The message was directed at the human forces. What have you done to us? No answer came. The humans offered no explanation. They simply allowed the Armada to suffer under the mysterious force that attacked every system of every vessel that had crossed their warning line. In the command center beneath the Canadian shield. Director Pierce watched the sensor data stream in real time. The system was working. Every calculation had been correct. Every prediction had proven accurate. The alien vessels were experiencing the cascade failures that the design had intended. She felt no satisfaction. She felt only the weight of the decision she had made. Tens of thousands of ships. Hundreds of thousands of crew members. Millions of lives were ending in those vessels as their systems failed, and their ships began to die around them. But they had been warned. They had received a clear warning, and they had ignored it. They had laughed at it. They had dismissed it as the desperate cry of a primitive species. And now they were learning what it meant to underestimate humanity. Pierce watched the sensors until the signal pattern changed. The cascade was slowing. The number of vessel failures was decreasing. The worst of it was over. The system had done its job. By the time 200 seconds had passed, the Armada had ceased to exist as an organized military force. What remained was debris. What remained were crippled vessels drifting through space with dead systems. What remained were survivors sending desperate distress calls into the void, hoping that rescue would come, but no rescue would come. The survivors would have to drift in their crippled vessels until they ran out of resources. They would have to wait in the cold of space, hoping that someone would eventually pick up their distress signals. They would have to live with the knowledge that they had ignored a warning from a primitive species, and that warning had cost them everything that the warning line had held. The humans had kept their promise. The galaxy was about to learn that Earth was no longer a world to be conquered. Earth was a world to be feared. The survivors of the Armada sent their first real communications out into the galaxy, 8 hours after the weapon systems activated. The messages were urgent and desperate. They spoke of a catastrophic failure of unknown cause. They spoke of a weapon that attacked not the hull of the ships, but the systems inside them. They spoke of technology that violated principles that all known civilization understood about physics. The first message reached the Galactic Council on Meridian Station. The chamber erupted into chaos. Species that had laughed at humanity's warning now found themselves facing a terrifying reality. The humans had not been bluffing. The humans had not been making an empty threat. The humans had deployed a weapon that could destroy an armada of 30,000 vessels without firing a single visible shot. Admiral Kress was dead. His command ship had suffered massive internal structural failure when its systems went offline. The vessel had torn itself apart under the stress of the cascade failure. The Krell commander had managed to survive long enough to record a final message. In that message, the Krell commander described what they had witnessed. A wave of energy that seemed to attack the fundamental systems of their vessels. A weapon that treated 30,000 ships like they were nothing. The President of the Galactic Council demanded an immediate explanation from humanity. A communication channel was opened to Earth, but it was not Commander Victor Hayes who answered the call. It was Director Amanda Pierce speaking from her command center in Colorado. The humans deployed a quantum destabilization device, Pierce said calmly into the communication system. It operates on principles that your younger galactic civilizations have not yet discovered. The device creates a focused cascade failure in all electronic and power systems of any vessel that crosses our boundary. The effect is total and irreversible. Any species that attempts to invade Earth will face the same destruction that the Armada faced. This is not a negotiation. This is a statement of fact. The chamber on Meridian Station fell into stunned silence. A quantum destabilization device. A weapon that operated on principles that the greatest scientific minds of 100 species did not understand. Humanity had somehow developed technology that should not have been possible. Within 6 hours, every major power in the galaxy was demanding to know how the humans had developed such a weapon. Within 12 hours, diplomatic vessels were being prepared to travel to Earth. Within 24 hours, the first official requests for negotiations were being sent. Commander Victor Hayes received new orders. He was to prepare for negotiations at the highest levels. Humanity's position in the galaxy had changed permanently. Where Earth had been dismissed as a primitive species an hour ago, Earth was now viewed as a potential threat that needed to be understood and negotiated with. Carefully, Victor prepared the negotiating chamber in the United Nations building in New York. The room had been used before for lesser diplomatic discussions, but nothing of this magnitude. Now it would host representatives from the 5 most powerful species in the known galaxy, all of them coming to Earth, all of them coming because a species that they had dismissed as prey had revealed that it was a hunter. Director Pierce read the diplomatic requests from every major power. The Xiphons wanted to know if Earth would consider a non-aggression pact. The Krell offered trade agreements and resource exchanges. The Confederation of 7 requested scientific cooperation. Every single message contained the same underlying meaning. Do not attack us. We do not want to be destroyed like the Armada was destroyed. Pierce allowed herself a small moment of satisfaction. Then she focused on the work ahead. The hard part was not over. The hard part had just begun. The first official representatives arrived on Earth 5 days after the Armada was destroyed. They landed at a specially prepared facility in neutral territory. They were greeted with formal military protocol. They were treated as honored guests, but with the clear understanding that they were in Earth's territory now. They were on humanity's terms. Commander Victor Hayes led the negotiations. He spoke with calm authority about Earth's position in the galaxy. He explained that humanity wanted peace, but Earth's peace would be determined by Earth. No species would invade Earth. No species would attempt to conquer Earth. No species would violate the warning line that had been drawn. The Xiphon sent Admiral Vex to replace the deceased Cress. Vex listened to Victor's words and understood that something fundamental had changed. The Xiphons could no longer simply take what they wanted from weaker species. The humans had a weapon that changed everything. The Krell negotiator spoke of cooperation between species. They wanted to understand the quantum destabilization device. They wanted to know if it could be shared, or if it was a technology exclusive to Earth. Victor's answer was clear. The technology was Earth's. It would remain Earth's. But Earth was willing to discuss peaceful coexistence and trade with all species, provided those species recognized Earth's independence and sovereignty. One by one, every major power accepted these terms. They had no choice. The alternative was to face the same destruction that the Armada had faced. Humanity had written a new rule in the galaxy, and the galaxy had to accept it. Director Pierce watched the negotiations from her command center. She saw the moment when the alien diplomats understood that they were dealing with a species that was fundamentally different from anything they had encountered before. The humans had not defeated the Armada through numbers or conventional weaponry. The humans had defeated the Armada through understanding, something about the universe that no other species had grasped. Patricia Wells was brought into the negotiation process to discuss the theoretical basis of the quantum destabilization device. She explained the principles to the greatest minds the galaxy had to offer. Most of them did not understand her explanations. Some of them understood the basics but could not grasp the full implications. A few understood enough to recognize that Earth was at the forefront of a technological revolution. Kyle Morrison never learned the full details of what he had helped build, but he learned enough to understand that his work mattered. The components he had manufactured with such precision had been part of something that saved humanity from invasion. The precision he had been trained to maintain had been crucial to the system's function. Back on Meridian Station, the Galactic Council voted to formally recognize Earth as a sovereign power with full membership in the Council. It was a historic moment. A species that had discovered interstellar travel less than a century ago now sat as an equal with civilizations that had spanned galaxies for millions of years. The vote was unanimous. Every species that had mocked humanity's warning line now recognized that they had made a terrible mistake. The galaxy had underestimated Earth. The galaxy had assumed that because humanity came from a harsh world, humanity would be weak. The galaxy had learned the hard way that the opposite was true. Humanity had learned to survive on a harsh world, and that meant humanity had learned lessons that softer species never would. The age of human vulnerability was over. The age of human strength had begun. The aftermath of the Armada's destruction reshaped galactic politics in ways that echoed across every civilization. What had been a galaxy dominated by older powers and established hierarchies suddenly became a place where a new player had proven its strength. The message was simple and unmistakable. Humanity was not prey. Humanity was not a resource to be exploited. Humanity was a force to be respected. The first changes came quickly. Trade agreements that would have been offered from positions of dominance were now offered as partnerships between equals. The Xiphons requested access to human markets. The Krell offered exclusive rights to rare minerals in exchange for human scientific cooperation. The Confederation of 7 proposed joint research programs in fields where human insights had proven revolutionary. Every single offer came from a position of respect rather than dominance. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Kyle Morrison received an official letter of commendation from the President of the United States. The letter recognized his contribution to the project that had saved humanity from invasion. Kyle never learned all the details of what he had helped build, but he did not need to. He knew that his work had mattered. He knew that the precision he had maintained in his machine had been important. He knew that he had helped save his country, his family, and billions of people across the planet. Kyle framed the letter and hung it in his apartment. He continued to work at the factory, but the factory had changed. Now it was openly recognized as part of the defense project. The workers were celebrated rather than kept in secrecy. Kyle became a minor celebrity in his community. He gave speeches at schools and community centers about the importance of precision work and dedication. Children listened to him and understood that their work, no matter how humble it seemed, could matter in ways they could not yet imagine. Patricia Wells became one of the most famous scientists in human history. Universities around the world offered her positions as head of research departments. Governments wanted her to lead their scientific programs. The alien delegations that visited Earth repeatedly requested meetings with her to understand the theoretical basis of the quantum destabilization device. Patricia refused most of these offers. Instead, she accepted a position at a research institute in Canada where she could continue her work on quantum physics. She began to train the next generation of human scientists in the principles that had led to the creation of the device. Some of her students would become as brilliant as she was. Some of them would make discoveries that would carry humanity even further into the technological frontier. Patricia eventually published papers that explained the quantum principles behind the device in ways that younger civilizations could begin to understand. Her work started a revolution in theoretical physics across the galaxy. Species that had been stuck at certain technological plateaus suddenly had access to new frameworks for understanding reality. Some would eventually develop their own versions of the technology. But Earth would always be known as the species that had discovered the principle first. Director Amanda Pierce received an official invitation to join the Galactic Council as Earth's permanent representative. She was offered the position of ambassador to the Council and given resources to establish Earth's permanent embassy on Meridian Station. Pierce accepted, but on one condition. The quantum destabilization device would remain under Earth's complete control. No other species would be given access to the technology. No other species would be allowed to manufacture it or modify it. The Council accepted her condition without argument. They understood that Earth's refusal to share the technology was the only thing preventing an arms race that could devastate the galaxy. As long as only Earth had access to the quantum destabilization device, every species had to maintain peaceful relations with Earth. If multiple species had the technology, the galaxy would likely destroy itself through conflict. Pierce's condition was brilliant in its simplicity. It prevented the technology from becoming a weapon of oppression while ensuring that Earth would never be threatened again. The galaxy would remain stable, but stable under the knowledge that humanity had the power to enforce peace. Victor Hayes was offered the position of permanent ambassador to the Galactic Council. He was given authority to speak for Earth in all official diplomatic matters. Victor had spent his career in diplomatic service, and now he had become the person responsible for representing all of human civilization to the known galaxy. The weight of that responsibility was enormous. But Victor carried it with the same calm and steady presence he had shown in the council chamber when he delivered humanity's warning, the first major diplomatic achievement after the agreement came when Victor brokered a peace treaty between the Xiphons and the Crow. The two species had been competing for resources and territory for centuries. Now, with the guarantee that Earth would enforce peace through the quantum destabilization device, both species felt secure enough to negotiate permanent peace. The treaty was signed on Earth as a symbol that Earth was now the neutral power that could be trusted to maintain order. Within a year, Earth had become the central hub of galactic commerce and diplomacy. Ships from every major civilization visited Earth to trade, negotiate, and cooperate. The economy of Earth transformed overnight as new opportunities for technology transfer and resource exchange opened up. Nations that had been struggling economically suddenly found themselves at the center of interstellar trade networks. Military academies across the galaxy began studying humanity's strategy and success. Alien military thinkers tried to understand how a species that had been technologically inferior could have defeated an armada of 30,000 vessels. The answer they arrived at was complex. It was not just technology. It was also the willingness to do what was necessary to survive. It was the ability to plan and prepare over a decade in secrecy. It was the unity of an entire planet working toward a single goal. It was the moral clarity that came from defending your home rather than attacking others. Humanity had not conquered anyone. Humanity had not expanded its territory. Humanity had simply protected its own space, and in doing so, had forced the galaxy to accept humanity as an equal. A year after the Armada's destruction, the Galactic Council held a special ceremony on Meridian Station. They declared the day of the Armada's destruction to be known as Humanity Day, a galactic holiday, celebrating the moment when the balance of power shifted and a new era of peace began. Victor Hayes stood in the council chamber on that day, watching as representatives from over 200 species gave speeches acknowledging humanity's strength and thanking Earth for ensuring the stability of the galaxy. The same chamber where Victor had delivered humanity's warning now echoed, with words of respect for humanity's power and wisdom. Victor thought about all the people who had contributed to Earth's success. He thought about Kyle Morrison making his perfect cuts. He thought about Patricia Wells solving impossible equations. He thought about director Amanda Pierce making the decisions that saved civilization. He thought about David Chun activating the system that changed everything. He thought about millions of ordinary people across Earth who had worked on a project they did not fully understand, trusting that their work would matter. That trust had been justified. Their work had mattered. They had helped save humanity. Victor returned to Earth and stood in mission control in Colorado with Director Pierce. The screens displayed communications from across the galaxy, requests for cooperation, offers of friendship, proposals for joint research, all coming from species that had once dismissed humanity as prey. Pierce turned to Victor and smiled. "We warned them," she said simply. "They did not listen. But now the galaxy understands. Humanity is not a resource to be taken. Humanity is a civilization that has earned its place among the stars through preparation, unity, and moral strength." Victor nodded. He thought about the young people growing up on Earth now, growing up in a world where humanity was respected throughout the galaxy, growing up with the knowledge that their species had protected itself and, in protecting itself, had earned the respect of the known universe. The warning line had held. The galaxy had learned to respect it. And Earth, the harsh world that had taught humanity to survive, had given that survival to the whole species. The age of human vulnerability was over. The age of human strength was just beginning. The future was bright, and it belonged to humanity.